Hello and welcome to Gaia Maps. Today we're starting our series on the 50 highest points in the United States. We'll be going in ascending order from lowest to highest. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the High Pointers Foundation and Lists of John for helping to verify the highest points in each state. We'll put links in the description to their websites if you'd like to learn more about the highest points in each state. Before we go to the lowest high point, take a second and try to guess what state you think it will be. Now take a guess which you think is the highest. Some of you may know already. Maybe if you have a home state or one that you have visited before, see if you can guess where that state will lie on the list. Okay, without further ado, let's get into the list. All right, and here we are at the lowest high point in the United States. It belongs to Florida. Britton Hill at 345 feet. This is one of the only ones where there's not actually a picture of the point itself. This is just street view looking in. It's basically just a highway rest stop with some slight elevation here. This is probably the part of the state that rests the highest in general, but if you guessed Florida, that was a good guess. Makes sense too. Probably has the most, at the most sea level of any state in the United States. So Florida is the lowest. Okay, so next up is Delaware. This one's very interesting. So it's near the Ebright Azimuth marker. So if you read this sign, it talks about the elevation being 447 feet at this mark. But towards the bottom, it says this benchmark monument is in the vicinity of the highest natural elevation in the state. So this is where that list from John that I mentioned came up. So they actually have tagged this area over here as being 451 feet. And this is a private road. I think it's a mobile home park, but it's within. It's in there. It's in there somewhere. So, kind of interesting one. You'll see this with other states where the elevation's not that high. There's just kind of a general indifference. We're going to get away from that pretty soon once we get higher up. So, Delaware was next. Okay, so welcome to Driskifl Mountain. This is in Louisiana. The elevation is 535 feet. This one, I'm sure, is just a very nice, pretty nature trail. Is there an overlook of some kind? Not particularly. 535 feet, you're not going to be able to see too much. Kind of show you what it looks like from the satellite. I mean, it almost looks like it is the highest because this area has been developed so much. Maybe it's been filled in over time and just happens to be bigger. I mean, Louisiana, I think being the third lowest might be a credit to them, considering how low that state lies for the most part. So, Louisiana was next. Welcome to Woodall Mountain, the next place on our list. It is in Mississippi. It was originally called Yow Hill. It was renamed Woodall Mountain for a sheriff that bought all of the land around it. I think this is kind of funny. The locals often call it a mountain in sort of a joking fashion. There's t-shirts you can buy that say Ski Woodall. Kind of cool, though. There's a National Geographic triangulation station and some radio towers here. This is a pretty important site for the locals, despite their sort of poking fun at it, as it were. You can see, though, we're starting to get into some spots where there's going to be some decent overlooks. This is the only picture of Woodall Mountain on Google, so we'll move right along. So the next one is Jeremoth Hill in Rhode Island. The elevation is 811 feet, just 4 feet higher than Mississippi's Woodall Mountain. but I had to go into the history of this one. It's got quite a story. So it was named after Jeremoth Brown, who was an early settler. It was dedicated to, it was donated, that is, to Brown University, and they now use it for stargazing. They've cleared a lot of the trees out, which you can kind of tell from this picture here, because they don't have any light pollution from Providence. Now there's a private property owner named Henry Richardson, who's known as the Madman of Jeremoth Hill. And the path to the summit was closed for many years because of Mr. Richardson, and he would not allow hikers to access the area. Apparently you had to use his driveway. You had to cross his driveway on the path to the summit. So eventually his son worked out a plan to allow people to access the path 4 times a year. After he died, it was purchased by another family, and they have permitted daily access and then finally ceded the land to the state. It was sold by Brown to the state, but they reserved the right to build an observatory there in the future. So a lot going on Jeremoth Hill. First example of a high point that just happens to sit higher than other places in the United States. This is Charles Mound in Illinois, elevation of 1,235 feet, but it doesn't look much different than the Florida one we saw just because of the way that things look around here on the horizon. This is obviously, this picture where I'm sitting is not the highest point, but I just wanted you to get an idea of what it looks like and if it's worth going there, and it's not. Next up is Indiana, another high point secluded in the wilderness. I have on my list it being called Hoosier Hill. This is the first example of some sports team flavored high points. The elevation, as this lovely rock indicates here, 1,257 feet. And it does not look like it's 1,000 feet high. This bench is not actually broken. That's just what happens sometimes when people do panorama cameras and they sneeze or something. Indiana, high point. This is it. And continuing east from Illinois, Indiana, we find Ohio next on the list. Probably some topographical reason for that, but here is the next high point. It is in Ohio. It is called Campbell Hill. It's 1,549 feet. It is in a school parking lot. All right, let's keep moving. Take a guess. Take a guess. Look out there. Take a guess where we are. If you are from Iowa, you will never live this down. The highest point is in a cornfield. This is a really cool design, though. I love this. I really do. So it is called Hawkeye Point, another sports team flavored high point. The elevation is 1,671 feet. And we're going to see some of these until we get into the top about 15 or so. There's going to be points like this where it just happens to be a high spot. It's not even necessarily a mountain or a hill. It just is high. But we love it. We love you, Iowa. A nice one to close out the first part here of the 10 lowest high points. This is Tomsock Mountain in Missouri. The elevation is 1,772 feet, and we are starting to get into places where we'll be able to have a bit of a nice view here Like I said, we're still going to run into a couple where they won't be as high necessarily, but this is a nice one. This is just a picture. That's okay. So that concludes part 1. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Gaia Maps. We'll be going through this series over the next few days. Be sure to get a discussion going in the comments for what you think will be number 1 in the top 5. Don't spoil it if you know or do. I'm not your dad. All right, have a good night, guys.